Hey guys, tonight we're settling in for a very long drift through history. So if you haven't already, dim the lights, pull the blanket over your shoulders, and maybe make sure your phone's on silent. This isn't the kind of thing you want interrupted by notification pings. We're about to wander into the half-sad, half-ridiculous world of royal love. And by love, I mostly mean political marriages, genetic experiments, and the occasional meltdown that someone's court poet decided to romanticize. Now, if you're expecting fairy tales, this isn't that. Royal love stories are less about butterflies and more about dynasties. Less Romeo and Juliet and more, please marry your cousin because the Habsburgs need more land? So tonight's journey is a soft, slow exploration of these so-called romances. We'll float through court after court, century after century, and see how the mighty kings and queens managed to turn passion, duty, and often very bad decision-making into what they called marriage. And don't worry, we'll take our time. We're not rushing. This is history you can fall asleep to. If you drift off halfway through Charles II's teeth falling out, well, that's exactly the point. Let's start gently with one of the most famous royal romances that wasn't much of a romance at all. The tragic, awkward, slightly comical marriage of Louis XVI of France and Marie Antoinette. Louis was not exactly Prince Charming. He was shy, socially awkward, and, according to every gossip at Versailles, more interested in locks, keys, and hunting than in his stunning Austrian bride. Nothing says romance like showing your wife the newest mechanism on your padlock collection. Marie Antoinette, on the other hand, was 15, which is another way of saying she was basically a teenager thrown into the most extravagant and backstabby court in Europe. She liked fashion, parties, and gambling. You know, normal teenage queen things. Now, their marriage was politically important. France and Austria needed the alliance. But romantically, it was a slow-motion disaster. For years, they didn't consummate the marriage. And in Versailles, that was everyone's business. People whispered about it. Pamphlets were printed about it. The lack of royal bedroom activity became practically a national crisis. Of course, in the background, Europe was sliding toward revolution, but Versailles preferred to gossip about why Louis wasn't, shall we say, performing his duties. Eventually, he had a minor medical procedure to correct some, let's call it, plumbing issues. After that, things finally worked out, and children followed. But by then, Marie had built a reputation for frivolity, gambling, and spending. Not exactly a recipe for popularity when your country is on the brink of bankruptcy. So when people picture first loves or fairy tale marriages, Louis and Marie are not usually the couple that comes to mind, unless your idea of romance includes guillotines. Now, let's drift over to another royal love story, this one from Spain, because if there's one dynasty that really knew how to make romance genetically questionable, it was the Spanish Habsburgs. Enter Philip IV of Spain. He was called the Planet King, which sounds impressive, but in reality, it was mostly because his empire was so large, it stretched across continents. His love life? Less cosmic. He was married to Elizabeth of France. She was elegant, charming, and by all accounts, a lovely queen. But Philip had what we might call a wandering eye. Court records note over 30 illegitimate children. When you get to a number that high, people stop counting. But here's the kicker. After Elizabeth died, Philip needed a new wife. Who did he marry? His niece. Yes, Mariana of Austria. She was 14 and also his blood relative, because of course she was. This marriage was disastrous genetically and emotionally. Mariana and Philip had children, but most died in infancy. The one who survived? The infamous Charles II of Spain, otherwise known as the Bewitched. Charles was a tragic product of generations of Habsburg inbreeding, sickly, deformed, and mentally unstable. People said he was cursed. The truth was, well, he just had too many great-grandparents who were also cousins. So Philip's romantic marriage to his niece gave us one of the saddest kings in European history. Romantic, right? From Spain, let's float over to England, because if there's one royal who really embodied messy love stories, it was Henry VIII. Now, Henry gets a lot of attention for his 6 wives, but let's not forget the first one, Catherine of Aragon. She was originally married to Henry's older brother, Arthur. Arthur died young, leaving Catherine a widow. And then, because heaven forbid an alliance with Spain go to waste, she married Henry. At first, it seemed fine. They were in love, or at least affectionate. Catherine was smart, devout, and dignified. But after multiple stillbirths and miscarriages and only one surviving child, Mary, Henry grew restless. He wanted a son. He also wanted Anne Boleyn. So Henry started insisting that his marriage to Catherine was invalid, that she had been his brother's wife first, and therefore it was against God's law. Catherine insisted otherwise. The Pope sided with her, but Henry didn't like no for an answer. So he created his own church, divorced Catherine, and remarried Anne Boleyn. Romantic? Not exactly. Catherine spent the rest of her life isolated and heartbroken. Henry, meanwhile, went on to cycle through 5 more wives, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak, executions, and one rather awkward ghost of a love life. You see the pattern here? Royal love was often less about love and more about, well, politics, inheritance, and sometimes a hefty dose of ego. But that doesn't mean we can't look at it through a soft, ironic lens. So let's keep drifting. Next up, the tragic, half-romantic, half-depressing marriage of Nicholas II and Alexandra of Russia. But let's pause here. This is a lot already, and we're only scratching the surface.